Hello, everybody out there, and welcome into another episode of The Hockey Show right here on Mile High Sports, done by some guy that does a lot of radio shows, way too many podcasts, and now introducing the NHL.com writer, beat writer for the Avalanche, Ryan Bolding. Ryan, congratulations!
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for making time for me in your busy audio schedule.
Absolutely. The other Ryan Bolding guy I used to have as a co-host, he was a bum. He didn't really do much at all, but this Ryan Bolding, he's a full-on writer.
I'm there. Yeah.
Credentialed in the building. So congratulations on that. I kind of want to ask you a bit, like, how did that go? Tell the listeners how that, because you and I knew for a little while. I had to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
But this was in the works for a few weeks, and here you are today, the NHL.com writer. Tell the folks how it happened.
Well, I have to thank Rick Sadowski because he stepped away from his role as the NHL.com independent correspondent here in town, and I saw the news from Adrian Dater, and so I tweeted Rick, I DM'd Rick, I slid into his DMs and said, "Hey,
you dirty dog!
Congratulations on retiring. We'd love to have you on The Hockey Show to come talk about your life experiences," because Rick has tons. I've worked with Rick for a long time. Like he told me stories about being on the road in Dallas, I think, covering the Kings when the earthquakes in LA happened, and having to scramble to get home. And I think he flew home with the team and stuff like that. He worked for the Rocky Mountain News for a long time. Lots of stories.
I mean, in full disclosure, we've had a list on the bottom of our rundown since this show started of potential future guests, and Rick has been on there since day one.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So anyway, he said he couldn't do it, but that he had recommended me to NHL.com, and I was like, well, that explains why my LinkedIn profile's blowing up. Should probably update that. And yeah, I had a big shoes to fill. There's a lot of expectations with my name being the one offered, and I guess I met those.
You knocked it out of the park.
I don't know about that. It's going to be a work in progress for sure, but it's exciting.
So how's it feel to be back in the writing seat, right? I mean, especially right now in the NHL, you kind of just jumping into full-fledged chaos.
Yeah, it is chaos. The couple of writing samples I had to do were all hat trick games. The third one I had to do was that Devils game where they scored, 5 unanswered goals to win? Craziness. So then you're just sitting on your couch. You're kind of removed from that. So now, being in the building, you're like, okay, there's a lot of stimulus going on. There's a lot of noise. I was the only person in the press box with a mask on, so that's weird. But, figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I always like to have headphones at the game, because it blocks some of that stimulus. It lets you kind of focus in on the game. You don't get distracted by the nonsense that happens on the Jumbotron. You don't get distracted by the fan in 348 yelling God knows what.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a little trick I use.
I did, yeah. So the highlight of the game for me, I think, was I was watching the Rasmus Andersson defensive pairing a lot. I felt like I noticed them a lot during the game as against Calgary. Mm-hmm. I had commented on how they were kind of getting taken to the cleaners, and I saw Anderson get high-sticked in the face. I saw him snap his head back, and then the refs call it, and then I watched as Pepsi Vision did not show the right, or Ball Vision, whatever it is, did not show the right replay, so everybody in the building starts booing, and then I looked up at the altitude feed, and they didn't show the replay of it either, so it just looked like somebody chopped his stick and then got called for high sticking. And I was like, oh, look, I wouldn't have known that was a legitimate call if I hadn't been here. So there you go.
Just the Avalanche controlling the media, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to be very trade deadline heavy, of course. We're only 2 days away from the actual trade deadline, and a lot of moves have been made, a lot of moves yet to make. But the guy we're all watching, the name we're all waiting for, the first domino that we really need to see fall before other moves seem to be made, is the Claude Giroux. After playing his 1,000th game on Thursday, it was very emotional, right? Extra emotional. You could tell that was going to be his last game in a Flyers uniform. Then the announcement comes. He's not traveling to Ottawa the next night. In my head, okay, this move is going to be done by Friday. Friday morning at the latest is what I thought. But here we are, Saturday afternoon, and still no trade. So my first question, let's start off with, what do you think is taking so long for the trigger to be pulled here?
Yeah, I know. I wrote about it a while ago when I was kind of looking into whether Giroux was a possibility for the Avalanche. And what I found was, he was so many games away from his 1,000th game. And immediately you're like, that's an important milestone. It's an important milestone to have done with one organization in your career. So obviously, nothing is going to happen before then. Like, if you're going to give him the power, if you're going to respect your captain, you're going to use him as a piece to better your future when you get rid of him. It's inevitable. His time there is over for now. You give him a thousands game. You give him what he wants. You try to be amicable. Plus, I mean, that gives you goodwill around the league, right, with players. We treated this guy with the utmost respect, so that looks good.
Great point.
So that's not surprising to me. But now what it comes down to is what's best for Philly. And he's got a little bit of say in this, but it's important to remember it's not like a free agent conversation where he's just like, okay, everybody, wine me, dine me, throw all the gold and all the horses and whatever stuff at me here, and let's figure out how to do this. It's like, what's the best return for this team that has treated me well? And more likely, like, where am I going to be comfortable? He's got young children. He's got to uproot his family. You have to think on some level, if he's going to go to a team, it may be to a place where he could consider signing another contract. Because if you're going to uproot your family, you don't want to do it multiple times, or you're leaving them behind for this playoff push, which is very intense. And again, young kids, you don't want to be gone from them very long. So, I mean, nobody can speak to his mental state, but I think the holdup is kind of the king's ransom aspect of it.
I'm curious if there's any remorse in Claude Giroux's eyes, right? Because you even heard from him, and you could put yourself in this same situation, right? There's times where you're looking for change, and you're like, you know what? It's time for a change. I need to make a move. And then the closer you get to that move, you're like, wait, is this the right decision? Do I really want to do this? So I feel like considering how emotional the 1,000th game was, and he even said, he was quoted as saying, like, this was more than I was expecting. I didn't expect to have this much emotion. I wonder if there's a little bit of hesitance in him, like, you know what, maybe let me think this over for another day. But I think the real situation going on is what's the best fit for him, right? Because he gets to say, he gets to decide, am I going to Florida? Am I going to Colorado? That's pretty to the front runner, pretty much the two front runners here. Florida seems to have that slight edge. But you look at Florida last night, they lost Aaron Ekblad. Rumor has it it's not going to be a season-ending injury. He should be back before the regular season ends. But that throws a little bit of a caveat into Florida and their strategy and their game plan here for the rest of the season. You look at Colorado, and you just see a plethora of talent, right? You kind of think to yourself, where does Claude Giroux fit? Claude Giroux loves power play time. Weirdly enough, too, I was watching the Flyers' 1,000th game and watching some of Claude Giroux's power play. He likes to play that right wing side as a right-handed player, right? So it's like the opposite how Mikko Rantanen likes to be ready for his one-timer because he's left-handed on that right side. Claude Giroux would play that same side. Just doesn't fit the power play system that the Avalanche run. So if you're Claude Giroux, you're thinking, all right, I'm probably not getting power play one time. Where do I fit in with this stacked lineup? Do I have more of an impact on the Florida team? And who do I really feel is the better team? I mean, he's gotten to see Florida more than he's seen Colorado, so that might, I guess, lean him one way or over another.
See, I'm not so sure that stuff factors in as much because, like I said, it's not a free agent situation. At the end of the day, it's going to be whatever Philly gets in return is going to be, I think, the most deciding factor. Plus, I mean, if you're bringing in Claude Giroux, I mean, he's going to play PP1. He's going to play minutes.
Where?
He's going to bump guys down. Maybe you move Rantanen into the second power play unit. There's no shame in having two lethal power play units. I have been banging the separate McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen drum for years, and you're finally seeing what happens when you do that, when you have the team to support it. This team is very lethal across multiple lines. I mean, the concern is he fit on the second line or is he on the third line? I don't think a Claude Giroux on the third line is that big of a deal. I don't think that, ego on playing time is something that really factors into, I want to go win a Stanley Cup necessarily, right? But I do think going back to potentially signing another contract, like that could play a factor. Where do I slot in the future, if there is a future here? That's potentially something I imagine he would think about. But, personal relationships play a role. I think team dynamics play a role, to be 100% honest. I mean, the reputation of Colorado as a player-friendly organization isn't as high as other places in the league, right? The Athletic put out a report that said that, Tampa was the most coveted team by agents suggesting where their players should go, and it comes down to Vinik Sports Group taking care of the families, taking care of the players with the facilities. You know, the Avs have barely practiced at family sports all year, and you can hardly blame them because the place is just dumpy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's no fault of theirs. It's just old now.
It was great 25 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody could have worked harder to get something set up with the new family sports complex or the new South Suburban sports complex, which they didn't. But you know, here we are. So you have to wonder, like, is there a reputation about the lack of amenities for players in Colorado that maybe hurts the decision-making process? You know, things like that. I don't really argue against, you know, the plethora of talent being another concern, but I think Florida has a lot of talent also. To me, the most interesting thing is looking at, you know, if this player has so much say in where he goes, why does he choose one place over another? You know, what's kind of the deciding factor, and how does that, you know, reflect on the organization he didn't go to?
And don't forget about state taxes, right? Income taxes in Florida are not a thing. Colorado, very much a thing. And when it comes to the signing of another contract, I think either team he would go to would tell him, like, let's see how this plays out first, right? We don't want to overcommit to you if this isn't even a good fit. So I don't know if that's exactly something that he's weighing on. But, all right, let's put yourself in Claude Giroux' shoes. You are Claude Giroux. You suddenly are better at faceoffs. You know how to shoot a puck now, finally.
I can grow a much better beard.
And you can pass tape to tape, which is something you still are working on here. What move do you do? If you're Claude Giroux and you've got these two teams courting you, where do you go?
That's the real conundrum here. The fact that it's down to the Colorados and Floridas and maybe, you know, another team is interesting because it speaks volumes, I think, about where Florida sees themselves in the build and how players are viewing Florida. So, I mean, travel is hard out west. Players don't go out west specifically because travel is harder. Recovery time is harder. Now, I'm not saying Sunrise, you know, Fort Lauderdale, Florida is the hub that Philadelphia is to the East Coast, but travel is easier out there than it is out west. So I imagine that's where he's going to end up. If it were his choice, I think that's the place.
So what I'm getting from you from this whole segment is you just think it's up to Philadelphia right now.
Yeah,
where
plus,
they want him to go.
I've been saying, too, for a long time that the Avs have something special going here, and bringing in another player like that changes what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It could change it for the better. It could change it for the worse.
Sure.
I mean, his talent is his talent, but I'm talking outside of just talent, ability, right?
Yeah, well, you know, if it's me, I'm going Florida. I mean, are you mountains or beaches?
I'm mountains.
I'm beaches,
yeah.
for sure.
I mean, I like skiing, but these guys can't ski.
Right.
So
you could definitely hang out on a beach. That's within the limits of your contract. Well, that'll do it for the first portion of our show. The line changed. Now we changed out the old Ryan Boulding, brought in a new Ryan Boulding, a better version of him, and let's see if the Avalanche can do the same with Claude Giroux and bring in a better center here. But we'll get into more of the Avalanche trades that they've been making so far already when we come back from the break. So stick around right here on the Hockey Show. Mile High Sports, JJ Jerez, Ryan Boulding. We'll be right back.
Right now, it's 16 minutes past the big hour. Is that not right, Mr. Scream? Great, good stuff. I think people are getting really cranked.
What do you think, Ryan? Are the people getting cranked?
I'm cranked. Like the movie Cranked with Jason Statham. I know you haven't seen it.
Never seen it.
Fine.
Here I am, refreshing my Twitter feed.
I just did that too.
Still no Claude Giroux.
Is it trade deadline day? It feels like every day for the last week has been trade deadline day.
You know,
I was just staying up the other night after the Philly game, just watching, Kevin Weeks and those guys on, what was that?
Thursday?
TNT?
Kevin Weeks?
NHL Network? I don't remember
NHL
what
Network.
I was watching.
NHL Network.
Yeah.
NHL Network.
And they just, like, he kept having little tidbits, and he was, like, just segments with him on his phone while the other guys talk. I'm like, oh, it's like Christmas. Something's going to happen. And then at, like, midnight, I was like, I should just go to bed. Nothing's going to happen.
Well, he's turning into the second coming of Elliot Friedman,
yeah,
right? Or
he's
even
the
Bob
American
McKenzie.
insider.
Right. He's starting to break trades. He's starting to be the guy who's getting the scoops. And, I look at Elliot Friedman, and you're like, what a lucky son of a gun, right? I mean, before it was Bob McKenzie getting all the scoops, and then Elliot Friedman just kind of backed into this job and was given the respect.
I don't know about backed into it.
I mean, come on. He kind of inherited this role. He didn't, of course, I'm sure he's done a lot of hard work in his life, but the guy started as an NBA reporter, right? It's not like he had so many NHL agents, NHL GMs, NHL players in his back pocket when he was first in the industry. He didn't.
I
he
mean,
didn't
it
even,
helps to be
he
at
didn't
the
even
center of the Canadian sports universe,
Sure,
of Sportsnet
sure.
too.
But he was put there. He
Yeah.
didn't fight his way there.
What's impressive to me is that he has established a reputation as an insider to the point where he can get the information. Where it's like, well, I could reach out to a GM, an assistant GM, a scout, whatever, right?
They probably
an
won't
agent,
text you back.
and they'll be like, "Who the f are you?"
They say block.
Yeah, they're like, "This guy, you write for who?" Everybody, okay.
NHL.com. Heard
okay,
of it?
you writing horror. So but that's the impressive thing to me, and that people don't get too annoyed with him to the point where they shut him out. That's the other impressive thing.
Yeah, I also don't envy him. Don't get me wrong. It seems like a very stressful, very up late, up early type of job, and not really my style.
Plus, there's a lot of pestering. We've tried with agents to get players on the show and been told no, and then it's you come back with a request again later for somebody else, and you're like, man, this person probably thinks I'm super annoying.
Same with sponsors, right? I feel like we get told no pretty easily.
I mean, we've been filtering out the sponsors.
Sorry.
We're just trying to make sure we have the right fit here. So
Right, exactly. One thing we forgot to get to, we were so
I
excited.
was gonna say,
Yeah, matinee money. We usually get to that in the first segment, so let's get to it real quick right now because there are two games going on in matinee style. Right now, the Islanders hosting the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild hosting the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm taking Dallas plus 1.5, and I'm taking Minnesota money line in a parlay minus 102. I like that. I like that play a lot. I don't think Islanders, despite beating the New York Rangers earlier this week, the Islanders just simply aren't the team we thought they were going to be. Dallas is this far away from a playoff spot. They're going to jump Vegas. Let's be honest about this. Vegas has no chance. They're 1 point ahead of Dallas with, I think, Dallas has 2 games in hand.
I mean, they need Lehner back bad. I like the Dallas pick, but it's such a razor's edge choice for me. It's either the Dallas shows up that's super hungry and tenacious, and Ottinger is locked in, and you get 2 goals out of Klingberg like the other day. Jason Robertson has a hat trick, or you get the Islanders that get to play spoiler, shut them down, play that tight defense that Barry Trotz likes to play but hasn't gotten much of this year. That one's risky for me. And then the other wild card is Chicago. Fleury can just take a game here or there, and Minnesota's kind of been riding the wave. So I don't think your picks are bad, but I can't go with your.
They usually are.
I mean, the safest bet for me is to not go with your selections.
Yeah, I think I've only gotten one right all season, so yeah, I wouldn't either. But Dallas on the upward trajectory,
Yeah.
Vegas on the downward, and with Chicago, you're right. Chicago's kind of a wild card, but Minnesota seems to rebuilding. They just added a new piece that they seem to be super excited about. One Tyson Jost, 2016 draft pick by the Colorado Avalanche, sent off in trade for Nico Sturm. Let's get into the additions before we get into the subtractions, right?
Yeah, all right.
The Avalanche acquired Nico Sturm and Josh Manson this past week. One a defenseman, one a depth forward. Let's just start with your thoughts on the trades.
Well, one for me, I was surprised. I had written, when I wrote this Giroux piece I mentioned, I said the most likely scenario is that the Avs go out and add defensive depth in case a guy like Bo Byram isn't ready to go or they lose somebody. Here we are, Gerard's out with a sounds like a slip of the tongue back injury that wasn't supposed to be conveyed as such.
And I think it's something he'd been dealing with for a while.
Most
because
likely.
Think of how many stones people were throwing at him for his game, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and suddenly they're like, you know what? Let's give this a pause.
And then I also said, kind of bottom 6 depth, and you got that with Nico Sturm. I'm not as high on that option. I know our Elliot Friedman mentioned on the radio in Canada that Tyson Jost may have asked for a trade 2 years ago, and this is just now it being facilitated, so that could make some sense.
Interesting.
His utilization is probably not what he wanted. I mean, he's obviously a talented player. I'm in agreement with people out there who think he probably rushed himself into the league and could have benefited from one more year at North Dakota. But I'm higher on the Josh Manson trade, and the reason I brought up that article is I floated in the comments to somebody potentially having Kevin Shattenkirk come in as an option, where I was looking, less like further down the depth chart as a potential replacement, and everybody was like, no, not him. I don't think a bad addition, but I'm surprised that Manson was made available. I liked his game before. He used to put up more numbers. I think he's been used more as a shutdown guy in the last few years, and so he brings maybe a younger capability of what the Johnson and Johnson law firm offering provides, but further up the depth chart than I was expecting.
Yeah, and I would say a younger, bigger, faster version of Kevin Shattenkirk, right?
Yeah, potentially.
So looking at these two guys, Nico Sturm only has played one game. Josh Manson has now played two. Looking at how they fit in so far, I mean, I think they've brought exactly what they were brought in to do. I mean, of course, very small sample size, but Josh Manson comes out the gate against LA, and what was it, 10, 11 hits he ended up with on that night. Nico Sturm's first game comes out and has a 75% face-off percentage. We haven't seen that in Colorado in I don't even know how long. He comes out, wins 6 of 8 of his face-offs. That's exactly what they needed him to do. They were tired of riding Kadri in the defensive zone face-offs. Jost wasn't getting it done. Jost wasn't getting it done on the penalty kill. Nico Sturm's going to come and improve on both of those facets. I mean, that's exactly what you have to do as a contender. Take the small bits of this team that aren't going the way you want them to, aren't going the ideal, perfect scenario way, and fill them. Make them better. Improve upon them as much as you possibly can. You don't have to make them perfect because there's a lot of parts about this team that are amazing and strong. I don't want to call them perfect, but almost. Just shore up the things that are lacking.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. A lot of people always say, well, faceoffs don't really matter, but they do in certain scenarios, and they do when it comes to puck possession. And so, yeah, that's something I'll have to keep an eye on with Sturm is his, face-off prowess, I guess I'd say. Other than that, I don't know that I really noticed him too much, but, that's kind of the dips and doodles of a hockey game where, I mean, even the Sunday game against Calgary last week, I didn't really notice Nathan McKinnon for a while. It took a little bit.
Well, especially up in that press box, you haven't been used to that 2-mile view. And
I mean, it is hard not to have people telling you what you're looking at in your ear. So you're just like, who is 56? What number? Who is that guy? Oh, yeah.
But bigger guys, right? That's the most obvious part of the acquisitions. They ship out guys that are small, bring in guys that are bigger. You saw McDermott over the offseason, obviously a conscious move by the Avalanche to get ready for these playoffs. But
I'm going to vindicate Patrick Waugh here and say that he wasn't wrong in saying that this team needed to be bigger.
I'll vindicate myself because I was saying the same thing during that same time. Good job, me. But let's get into the guys that went out, right? Losing Hellison, we hardly knew ye. It was fun to get to watch you in the Olympics. It was fun to get to dream of what might be, but we know how much depth this organization has defensively. So, I guess that's somebody they're willing to lose. And then Tyson Jost. Tyson Jost, I think, is the biggest thing because it's such a polarizing topic in Avalanche land, right? There were so many Avs fans, and I'm still bewildered by this, that were crushed by Tyson Jost leaving.
Well, there's always attachment to players in fandom, and I even think some media becomes attached.
In this situation, I just don't understand it because he was a career underachiever.
He was a nice kid, though. That's the difference. I think on a personal level, you appreciate
Calvin Pickard.
You appreciate good interactions with players, right? For me, I'm like, it's a bummer that he's gone and it didn't work out because I thought he was very easy to work with. He came in, he let me put a GoPro on him during rookie camp and ran some drills, and he kind of like dominated the drill, and it was great footage, stuff like that. A guy that didn't shy away from when you asked something. He wasn't too cool to help you out on the media side of things. And, Grandpa Jost. Yeah. We lose Grandpa Jost, too.
We haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. So, maybe there's a reason for that.
To your point right there, and to what I just said with Calvin Pickard, right? You go back to the team.
Love picks.
Yeah, who didn't? We loved picks. We loved having Tyson Jost. We loved having Tyson Barrie. Yeah. Mikko Rantanen would even be fun to chat with. 3 of those 4 guys are gone.
Yeah.
Mikko Rantanen has a completely different attitude than we've seen from him in the past.
He definitely has an edge. If the locker room was open and you could wander around and talk to guys, I would walk up to him and be like, what's changed with you? Like, where are you at? You're very upset on the ice often, yelling at the refs, just swearing, like fiery. You used to be such a sweet kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
But is that the competitive edge? What is that? I don't know. He did tell a joke well, not really. He didn't tell a joke. He had a joke delivery of being asked what he traded for a stick for during the game against Calgary. He said gum. And then he said the kid had some red candy and some gum, and the red candy didn't look good, so he kept the gum, but the trainer probably ate it.
Oh, I was hoping he walked up and just said, "Hey guys, knock knock."
It would have been better if he was just chewing gum.
But yeah, so what I was getting at, it just seems like they actively tried to get the nice guys out, try to get this meaner, grittier mentality about the team, and it's working. I mean, I can't say anything bad about it. I'm not saying that pure speculation.
To me, it's
Pure
the
speculation.
Joe's for Sturm thing is surprising. That's why I think maybe there's more to it than we knew. I like the Manson addition. I think that's a big deal. Hellison reportedly was concerned about where he would fit in an organization with so much defensive talent up and down the lineup, which is a good place for the Avalanche to be after years and years of just having nobody on the blue line. So, I mean, I don't hate that, but Hellison immediately signs an entry-level contract. He's going straight to the Ducks.
Wow. Real quick, short answer here since we're up against the break. If the Avalanche were to not make another move this deadline, is this team equipped to make
that's
the run? Not a run,
yeah.
The run.
I can't give you the quickest answer you want for that because it also depends on what other teams around them do. Like right now,
we can get into it on the other side.
I mean, right now the Blues are in on Hampus Lindholm. Like that makes them much better. Like you got to look at what are some of these other teams doing. Calgary, what's Calgary doing? We can get into that after the break. I think the Avalanche have enough. Giroux puts them over the top, but at what cost?
Awesome. Well, yeah, stick around with us, and we'll get into some more trades from around the league right here on the Hockey Show, Mile High Sports. Check us out, FM Radio, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, podcast. You can find us anywhere. If you're missing us, you're blowing it. So stick around. We'll be right back. JJ Jerez, Ryan Bolding, and we got Alex Becker. Danny Bailey's not here with us today, so welcome. We'll be right back. Mile High Sports.
Let's go, Colorado!
Gotta wait for this to hit. The build up.
I'm waiting. Welcome back in. It's the Hockey Show. We're here for segment number 3. More trade deadlines around the league. We got to look around. Before we get to that, I want to start with this little anecdote of my past week. Ryan, I flip houses, right? It's part of my side gig. It's how I stay afloat in this world. The latest house I flipped came with a lot of junk, let's call it. These people were
hoarders, you can say it.
Hoarders/collectors, though. So they had a lot of cool stuff. Like, for example,
I have a hoarder in my immediate family. He knows who he is. He may be listening.
Is he watching?
Yeah.
Laser discs. Have you ever heard of laser discs? I didn't know what a laser disc was.
Pre-DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-VHS. Right?
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't think it's that old, but close.
Oh.
I mean, it's old.
Okay, well, for example, I found a Star Wars collector's item, the entire set Laserdisc, the trilogy, right, before those other ones came out. And also what I found was just such a gem. I found this box, white box, and on the top of it, there's a Patrick Waugh and a Joe Sakic, perfect condition, covered in plastic, rookie cards. Can you believe that find? I mean, as a hockey guy, I screamed. I was like, I can't believe I just found this. The rest of my family was like, what are you talking about? There's Laserdisc.
You're just running out to the car with it under your shirt.
Playboy mags.
I'll
I'm
be
like,
right
no,
back.
you guys can't have this. This one's mine. They're like, we don't want that. But that Joe Sakic rookie card, it's like a $900 card that I just found.
Yeah. What else was in the box?
More cards.
What's in the box?
More cards.
Yeah.
More O-Pee-Chee old school cards. I'll bring them next show, and we can go through them. How about right here? Because I haven't gone through them yet.
Okay.
I just saw the 2 on the top, and I was like, this is the best box I've ever found. So
That'll be thrilling radio.
I don't know. People do that. I've seen it on
Look at this one. Wow.
I've seen it on NHL Network. You haven't seen that? People opening cards on
I
air.
saw that somebody's doing like a YouTube thing or something.
Well,
I don't know.
Because during the pandemic, and I partly think you and I were responsible for this, right? But during the
We
pandemic,
brought cards back. OPG, sign up.
cards came back, and so I think Upper Deck card companies
Tops.
really tried to lean into that and say, all right, let's keep this publicity going and let's do it on live TV since people are
They
loving
have
cards.
been doing it for a while because I don't remember if it was in Chicago at the draft or Buffalo, but maybe it was Buffalo. I got a flash drive. They handed out, I think it was Upper Deck or
Nobody
Top.
wants digital cards.
I know. The digital card thing's ridiculous. But they handed out a flash drive, and it was like a hockey player. It was like rubber, and you detached it, but it was a hockey player. And I was like, oh, that's smart. And then I erased everything on it so I could
And
use
used
it
it
for
for other
storage.
things.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the what other teams might be thinking around the league. I'm particularly intrigued by two teams. That's Vegas looking for a goaltender, and that's
Right. Rumors of Robin Lehner's demise may have been greatly exaggerated, though. Somebody said he had a broken patella, and he like clapped back on Twitter and said, "Wrong again." And now they're like saying it's an upper body injury. I don't know, but now they're saying he's expected to be back soon. But yes, they are in desperate need of goaltending and everything else. They've got a whole roster's worth of injuries.
right. And with Robin Leonard, I mean, that's not your answer. Even if he is healthy, I still think they need to find a goalie if they want to compete this season. It might be too late. You're right. They have a lot of injuries. They might just look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, we just don't have what it takes this year. Let's stay in pat, and we'll make some moves during the offseason. Let Dallas skip us because we're not winning a cup.
I can't wait to hear the apologies on Twitter that everybody's going to send me when I said, what happens if Mark Stone isn't back for playoffs or they don't make the playoffs, right? Because everybody's like, they're just cheating the cap. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Everybody line up.
We'll never know. But the other intriguing thing, and similarly, right, because Vegas and Marc-Andre Fleury have been kind of tied to possible trade rumors. Who knows? I mean,
Kelly McCrimmon came out and said, nope.
very much rumors, right. With that, though, I'm intrigued by what's going on in Calgary as they look for a depth defenseman, and Seattle Kraken are currently resting, we'll call it, Mark Giordano,
They're just going to trade him back to Calgary.
former Calgary captain. Why not? What a good fit. I mean, and why not just stick it to the team that gave him to you, make them pay to get their player back?
What if Calgary signed Lindholm? They had two Lindholms, Lindholm's cousin, Yarncroc. They got Markstrom. I mean, Calgary, to me, is, you know, everybody thought Vegas was going to be the team to beat.
Mm-hmm.
It's Calgary now.
100%.
Nobody saw that coming except for maybe Darryl Sutter. But it's just like the style of hockey they play, for having not seen them a lot, getting to see them in 2 games recently,
They're talented.
they look good.
Yeah.
They move the puck good. They're playing the second of a back-to-back the last game against the Avs, and they came out hard. Like, they could have scored 4 goals in the first 5 minutes of that game, and had they, it might have been over. But then they kind of wore out. The Avs wore them down, took over. They're fast. They are very good on the forecheck. I like how they play. It's very entertaining.
Indeed. I mean, and the additions of Toffoli, it's a big move, but I still feel like that it's not quite enough. A lot, kind of like
Yeah, but he has been like a point per game player since then.
I just think that there's a little bit more they can add to that forward group to maybe really be a contender. But obviously their focus right now is on defense. But yeah, Calgary is absolutely a team to watch and would be an awesome Western Conference final just based off the 2 games we've seen earlier this month between the 2 teams. And we still have 1 more to go this month.
Yeah, they're looking for a defenseman. Giordano obviously would be a good fit. I don't know what the cost of that is. I mean, you know, you got Yarncroc already from him, so I don't know that you double dip there.
Otherwise you would feel bad for Mark Giordano, right? I mean, he's sitting there, the captain of Calgary, then he gets left unprotected, kind of a slap in the face, goes to his new team, immediately gets named captain, and they try to trade him away, another spit in the face. Like, I just, unless he goes back to Calgary, I'm going to feel really bad for him having to jump around, just feel unwanted.
Yeah, I just don't know how to counter it, really. Like, Seattle's not in a position to be successful this year. Do you want to be a part of that? Like, you got left unprotected, and so they made you veteran de facto captain, which is awesome. He deserves that kind of recognition. But, you know, I mean, any player that leaves a Chicago to go to Tampa, right, or that leaves a Flyers to go to Florida or Colorado, Manson going to Colorado, like any player that goes from a team out of it to a team very much in it, I don't think there's a lot of hard feelings about that.
All right, I'll take that. And with Calgary, you've got Johnny Gaudreau situation on your hands, right? He's going to be a free agent this summer, and in years past, it seemed like Johnny Gaudreau was on his way out of Calgary. He didn't seem to be happy there. He wasn't producing sometimes, and really, you know, kind of got a lot of stones thrown at him by the Calgary media. But now he's flourishing. He's got some teammates around him. Mangiapane's a great addition. Do you think he is going to consider staying in Calgary this year?
Yeah, I don't know why he would leave, especially when things are on the up and up. You know, the organization seems to be in a good spot. The coaching staff seems to be in a good spot. You know, I think the scouting report on Sutter is that he can be a bit grating on players. He can be very tough on players. So, I mean, that can make things harder, but I mean, when you are finding success with an organization in a situation, you don't necessarily want to just leave that for some unknown.
And we heard earlier this week Darryl Sutter during a press conference talking about the Colorado Avalanche and how any team that gets into that wild card spot and plays the Avalanche in the first round is likely going to get swept, right? He called it a quick 8 days.
Wasted 8 days.
A wasted 8 days. I wanted to get your reaction on that. Do you think he's playing a little bit of, I guess, mind chess here, or do you think he's just genuinely that high on the Avalanche right now?
Now, I haven't worked with him. I haven't been around him much. When I was with the Avs, I obviously didn't spend a lot of time in an opposing team's locker room, so I'm going off of the gut and what I know. He seems like a pretty straight shooter type of guy, so I don't think he's being too coy. I don't think it's really mind games. I think he's being honest about, we want to compete to be highest up as we can in the standings, so we're not that team just wasting 8 days against this club that is almost unstoppable.
And then with that, let's just say hypothetically down the road, Western Conference Final is the Avalanche versus the Calgary Flames. Looking at the head coaching matchup, right? Darryl Sutter versus Jared Bednar. Does that make you a little bit worried for what Jared Bednar could possibly do or not do in terms of having a successful series against a guy like Sutter?
So yesterday I posted a column on Colorado Hockey Now about, and you have to be a Plus member to read it, but it was about what does Jared Bednar have to do to get some Jack Adams respect in the league. NHL.com polled 15 writers and editors. They had Bednar down on the honorable mention side of things. And ESPN polled Professional Hockey Writers Association members for their votes. And Bednar was kind of out of the top three there, too. Do I think that what Darryl Sutter has done with Calgary is deserving of Coach of the Year? Absolutely. Do I think what Gerard Gallant has done with the Rangers is deserving of Coach of the Year? I think the jury's out. Time will tell on that one, right? They've got a lot of talent too. I think Brunette stepping in for Joel Quenneville has been great, but I think Jared Bednar, to me, the Jack Adams is as much about legacy and consistency as it is about 1 year, right? So I fully believe that Patrick Waugh scared everyone off of Jack Adams voting because he won on a year where Colorado backed into the playoffs by winning a bunch of games in overtime at the end of the season. Never made the playoffs again.
Credit to Varley.
Never made the playoffs again. And so you're like, okay, we named this guy Coach of the Year, and then it was a downward trajectory after that. What does that say about the Coach of the Year and that process? So I think Bednar has done an unbelievable job of taking this team from one of the worst years in salary cap history to perennial playoff team to Stanley Cup contender in just 5 years. That said, I think he got out-coached a little bit in Vegas in the series last year, and I'm concerned that Sutter's experience could have that happen again. And that's not a knock on Bednar, but more credit to Calgary coach's vast experience as a head coach in this league.
With the 5 teams I see that are front-running the Jack Adams right now, or the 5 coaches, Darryl Sutter, Gerard Gallant, Andrew Burnett, Mike Sullivan, Rod Brindamore, there's a theme between the top 4, right? They're all teams that turned it around coming into the season, maybe weren't supposed to be great, ended up having a great season. Rod Brindamore, though, has been a coach of a good team for a while.
And he won last year.
Just as comparable as Jared Bednar. So if Rod Brindamore deserves to be on there, Jared Bednar deserves to be on there. Jared Bednar deserves not only the Coach of the Year, but the Coach of the last 4 years.
And I think it's tough because there's a lot of talent that factors into it, right? But, I mean, I think the Avs have better talent necessarily than Carolina. So that may be a knock on them. But, like you said, consistency, I think, is key. So am I worried about a Flames-Avs matchup? I am.
Right on.
Yeah.
Way to come back for full circle. That's
Tie
how
it
it's
around.
done. This show's flowed really nicely. I love it. But we got one more break to get to, and then, of course, the mixed bag skate. We're just going to get to some more trade deadline stuff. There's still a lot of names floated out there, as well as a few other, news topics out there that we're going to get to. So stick around for the mixed bag skate. My favorite portion of the show. We just get to be loose, have some fun, relax, and go downhill because we're almost out. So stick around. We'll be right back through the break right here at Mile High Sports. This is the Hockey Show. JJ Jerez, Ryan Boulding. We'll be right back.
I play hockey and I fornicate because those are the 2 most fun things in cold weather.
They sure are, Ryan. And the cold is leaving us. I'm looking outside the window right here at the Mile High Sports radio station, and there's still snow, but there's green grass underneath it. Starting to turn green.
It looks like what our friend John Reedy refers to as shinter, which I can't say on the radio other than that.
Spring and winter?
You can figure it out. There's no P. It's an H. But it's where you go through this wave of nice days, and then it'll snow again on Monday, and you're like, cool, can it ever end?
Well, St. Patrick's Day is always an indicator that you're almost there. Normally, baseball season, the start of is too, but I don't even know when that's supposed to start. As I said before, I've renounced my Colorado Rockies fanship. I'm done. I'm a Miami Marlins fan now.
You're, I think, 10 years late on that, but all right.
Yeah. Well, I hung on there. I liked that bar that they got up there. I tried to.
You were fooled by the rooftop.
Yeah.
You're one of those.
I was. So we got more to get to trade deadline-wise. Actually, not even. A lot of these stories aren't even trade deadline. So let's just get to them. Starting with the man we left off with in the last segment, Darryl Sutter had a fascinating quote yesterday after their 1-0 loss in Buffalo.
Yeah, he was mad. Yeah, he was mad about the medical staff taking so long to get Eric Goodbranson stitched up. And it took him half an hour. And he said, I could have done it in 5 minutes. I sew horses and cows up in 10 minutes. And that's just some Canadian ranch coming out from the coach. I think it's hilarious. It would have been even better if he just got so mad he just went back and did it. And it was some poorly done horse type of stitching. Like, he'll live. It's not about how he looks. It's about getting him back out on the ice. A little bit of that old school mentality, like, come on, play through it. Let's go.
Yeah, just put some butterfly stitches on there, right? Get this going. My two questions are, A, does he really do that with cows and horses? And B, what's going on to his poor cows and horses that he's having to stitch them up so often?
I mean, accidents happen to animals.
That bad? I've never seen a cow or a horse with stitches, but I don't spend much time with cows or horses. I guess I'm a city
house
boy.
flipper.
I'm a house flipper city boy. Let's get into Carey Price back on the ice. Not only that, he's back in practice with his team. He's not just skating by himself like we've seen him do so many times. Carey Price back for Montreal. Does that give you any sort of tingle, excitement, anything?
Gives me the tingle. I sat on him for a while in fantasy hockey, just waiting like, oh, he'll come back, he'll turn this thing around, and then Montreal's season just went down the toilet until they fired their coach and brought in St. Louis. So, it's exciting when one of the best goalies in the game comes back or potentially comes back, and you want to see how he does. I was excited when Rask was coming back, and then that didn't work out. So you hope that maybe it works out for Carey Price here. Good talk. Yeah, thanks.
I wanted to figure out which direction to go to next, but Austin Matthews gets a 2-game suspension for cross-checking. Who did he cross? That's what
Darlene.
That's what gave me the pause. Two games for cross-checking Darlene in the head. What did you think of the cross-checks, and what did you think of the suspension?
I'm glad that you hold this superstar accountable. I don't think it was like an in-defense thing. I also don't think it was intentional. Darlene's a big boy. I thought he just, Matthews came in hot and unfortunately got him in the side of the face. But, it's an ugly play. It's suspension worthy, and now he's on notice. Again, I couldn't help but notice in the comments everyone complaining that Kadri would have gotten 10 games for that play. And again, he would have gotten 10 games for that play because he is a repeat offender. I don't know how many times we have to say this, but your history in the NHL plays a role in your suspensions.
100%. And it seemed like a very, what's the word I'm looking for here?
The struggle is real here, Alex.
Pretentious? No. Entitled move, right? He took it into his own hand and thinks he can go above and beyond. Like, there's one thing. You feel like you've been slighted in the NHL, you drop the gloves. You don't come and take a cross-check to somebody's head. I mean, that could have very well been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah.
Especially if you catch him in the front of the face. Luckily, he got him on the side of the head. I'm sure Rasmus Dahlin wasn't pumped about it, but that's why you saw them get into a little bit of altercation. But it just seemed like a soft move, a very entitled, like, oh, I don't have to fight, but I can come and do something extra nasty to you. I mean,
I think a bit of frustration too. Toronto's been losing.
So what?
I don't disagree with you. Like I said, I feel like, at times superstars think that they maybe get preferential treatment or no calls. I know there's been a lot of conversation about how McDavid doesn't get enough calls, right, against him. But I just don't know about taking justice in your own hands this way. It's the same thing when I said, McKinnon gets high-sticked in that game against Arizona. He goes after Mayo. He starts fighting, and all you can think is, protect your nose and protect your hands. Why are you fighting? You've got Curtis McDermott on your team.
100%. And let's not forget, like, it makes me think of Marty McSorley and Donald Brashear, right? When Marty McSorley took a stick to Donald Brashear's head.
I mean, it was a little.
Of course, it was different. It was more of a swing with the blade of your stick to a guy who's got his back turned. But the stick is a dangerous weapon. I think that could easily have produced a similar result with, an injury, knocking him out. He just got kind of lucky that he didn't hurt Rasmus Dahlin. I hated it. I love Austin Matthews. I think he's this generation's best player, hands down.
I think he's probably going to win the Hart this year.
I think he deserves to win the Hart. That's what I was going to say next. But that kind of stuff is...
I don't like it.
Out. Get it out. Out of my face. Not Lady being worthy. I want to get into Philip Forsberg next. Of course, we saw earlier in the season there was a little bit of turmoil between him and the Nashville Predators. It sounded like there were rumors floating around that he requested a trade. Here, as we approach the trade deadline, they're not going to trade him because they're still very much in the mix. He's a great player for him, scores amazing goals. I think he did the between the legs last night. But there's a good chance he's walking this free agency. So if you're Nashville, how do you handle the Philip Forsberg situation? Do you try your hardest to work it out with him here, or do you just kind of say, you know what, you're basically our rental. We didn't have to trade for you. We're going to see what happens this offseason, but you're likely gone.
The way this team has been playing, I mean, they've been up and down. I saw an interview with Matt Duchene talking about it recently. I can't remember if it was with NHL.com or whoever it was, but he was saying, we sat down with Coach Hines, talked about, over the offseason, what was working, what wasn't working, and how to fix it. And that's been part of the reason why he himself is having such a good season. But so many players on this team are having a good season. Roman Josi has had 3 multi-point games in a row. Like, this team is very close. Saros is one of the best goalies in the league, right? This team is right on the cusp, and I think you nailed it in Forsberg, you're our rental. I'm not sure that you're going to get what you want for him in this market, being on the cusp of going probably a little deep. So that one hurts. I always think when Forsberg comes up that he is the draft pick that Washington got from the Avalanche in the Varlamov trade, and they drafted him, and then they ended up trading him to Nashville. So it's crazy to think, the connection there, but I think you keep Forsberg. You try to make him happy. I think the best way to make a player happy is to perform in the postseason and go deep and be like, look where we are with you. We want you to be here and be a part of this.
Right, and then make some moves in the offseason that indicate to that forward that you're going all in to take
if
that
you
next
can.
step forward.
Otherwise, you just lose Paul Stastny to the St. Louis Blues for nothing, and you're like, drats.
Roman Josi, currently 12th in the NHL in points. Not even amongst defensemen. Of course, he's number 1 in defensemen. But at 72 points, he's got more points than a lot of valuable forwards.
Artemi he's
Panarin,
close to
Steven
Kadri.
Stamkos,
He's close
Nathan
to Kadri.
McKinnon. He's got more points than all of those guys.
Yeah, he's close to Kadri's numbers. And Cale Makar was running away with defensive points, and Josi caught up to him.
Right, so that brings us to the conversation of what's the Norris looking like right now? We know it's basically a 3-horse race between Josi, Makar, Hedman.
Yeah, I don't think that it should. I think the best all-around defenseman, right? I think offense and defense should factor in. I think Cale Makar is pretty deserving of it, but at the same time, I almost feel like I'm suffering from some West Coast bias. I haven't seen Hedman play a lot, but when I have seen him play, I'm also very impressed with how he plays and how he plays defensively. And let's not forget that Tampa played a game with, 4 defensemen earlier this season? And he logged massive minutes. And when asked about it, he was pumped. He's
loved
like,
it.
As a defenseman, you never have this opportunity. I want to play as much as I possibly can. It's very impressive. That race is going to be one of the tightest, I think.
Tomas Hertl and the San Jose Sharks. It was kind of a similar situation. You weren't sure if San Jose was going to ship him out or try to work it out. It sounds like they came to an agreement of 8 years, $8 million a year for Tomas Hertl. Does that sound like overpayment to you?
I think he's worth it in the long run. Most of these contracts are of that type, right? Is he a Gabe Landeskog? I'm not so sure about that, but a guy that they can build the team around for a couple more years at least. The problem is they've got like $46 million invested in 5 or 6 players. Like, that's a bad spot to be in.
Yep, they're going to have to
The Burns is the Carlsons, the Hurdles.
and they still stink. That's the worst part about it.
Yeah.
They're still a terrible team. Last thing I really wanted to get to was 3 Ice. I hadn't really heard about this until this week, but it sounds like there's a 3-on-3 hockey league getting started. We saw some names tied to Colorado, like Chris Bork, right, son of former Avalanche Ray Bork, and we saw a name that just was a blast from the past for me. Blast from the past. Aaron Palushai. A lot of L's.
Yeah, Palushai. He was a quick in and out type of guy. Young guy, had a lot of spark to him. I know I've told you this story, as you so politely reminded me. I've probably told it on the show or the podcast or to any stranger I meet on the street corner or in the grocery store. But years ago, for my own website, I wrote a story about safety equipment in the NHL, and it was when, cut-proof socks were coming out. And I remember Teemu Selanne had one on his arm, and he held his skate up to it, and I was like, look, I can't even cut my arm. And so I went around the locker room talking to guys like Matt Duchene and Ryan O'Reilly about visors. Duchene said he wanted to protect his eyes, where O'Reilly was like, I don't really care. He still doesn't wear a visor, right? I talked to Jan Heda about the cut-proof socks. He was just wearing regular old white, like Hanes socks. He said he didn't like the fit of the cut-proof socks. Guys don't like to change. Aaron Palushai told me about a time where he got cut by Marty Turco in training camp. And I wrote about that in this story. And Marty Turco just found it on his own and tweeted it out one day. It was like my big moment of glory as a nobody blogger. Marty Turco just tweeted this out.
On his own accord.
Yeah, just found his name in it. Like, I guess he was searching his name or whatever. Somebody sent it to him. He tweeted out. Loved it. So that's my Aaron Palushai story.
Are you excited for 3 Ice? Are you going to watch?
Yeah, probably. It depends on how it pans out. What I really want to see is let's just combine the women's hockey leagues. Let's get one. Let's get NHL support. Let's get one out here in the West so we can enjoy this. Right? Here's my big plan. You run the women's hockey league counter to the men's hockey league. So you run the women's hockey league in the summer. You run the men's hockey league in the winter. We got hockey year-round. High-level, top-quality hockey year-round. No conflicts.
It sounds like 3 Ice is supposed to be a summer type thing, too.
Well, yeah. I'm not talking about that.
Well, I was.
Well, I mean, you don't want to compete with the NHL if you're doing another hockey anything.
Sure,
It'd be like the XFL and the NFL running at the same time. Why would you do that?
Good question.
Because you're foolish.
Oh, well, that'll do it for today's show. Lots to talk about. There was still plenty that I wish we could have gotten to. I feel like we could have filled another hour, but that would have just been me more stumbling over my words. So
save it for your podcast.
Now, so we'll be back next week. Let's see what happens. Monday's the date. Come on, Claude Giroux. We're waiting for you here. Maybe he could be our first Avalanche player guest, current Avalanche player guest. We've had a lot of former.
Yeah, I'll ask.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Any closing words, Ryan?
Nope.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on The Hockey Show. We'll be back next Saturday. That's it. That's all I got for you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Bye.